Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. I'm Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I direct the Independent Living Research Utilization Program at TIER Memorial Hermann, and I'm professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston. We've got a very interesting show today for you, and we have a question that we'll answer before the end of the show. I want to ask you, who in the audience today was Miss Wheelchair Texas? We'll answer before the end of the show. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Focus on Abilities.
The following program is sponsored by ILRU, Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
You're watching HTV. This is Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden. Our guest today on Focus is Michelle Colvard. Michelle, welcome to Focus on Abilities.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here.
Now, you have a long history as an advocate in Houston for people with disabilities, and you're presently on the Planning Commission for the city. Tell us what that job entails.
Oh, wow. How long do we have? So on the Planning Commission, we receive requests for replatting, for variance requests, and really, even parking variances if developers want to build and they would like a parking variance. So my role, really, the way that I look at it, my lens is as a person with a disability, and I have a unique perspective, having been born with my disability. And I also look at, of course, public safety. I'm extremely concerned about that and how that dovetails with Vision Zero with the city, and trying to ensure that people can get around the city, whether or not they have a disability, safely. And that's, plays a big part with the Planning Commission.
So that lens that you described as a disability advocate, do you carry that with you regardless of what your job is?
Well, of course, yeah, no doubt. I like you, I'm sure, there are a lot of things where I'm just maybe too close to it and don't always realize that somebody that doesn't have a disability doesn't see things the same way that I do. They may not see that a sign in a particular place, it's well-intentioned, to help direct somebody that's in a wheelchair, can't be visible by that person in a wheelchair, so you wouldn't know that there's a ramp over here or an elevator over here, You just kind of go about life, with a particular perspective, literally, in a lot of sense, that other people don't have. And I'm often just shocked by, some of the points that I might bring up in some sort of advocacy capacity, and, realize that this is something somebody hasn't ever heard before.
So your own experience is informed by your disability as a wheelchair user.
Right.
And yet you're expected to represent all people with disabilities. Yeah. How do you adopt that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I work really hard at educating myself over the years. I've met with just many different groups, whether it's people that are hard of hearing, the deaf community, autistic community. You name it. I am not personally in those communities, but I really do try to understand their perspective, and then I try to be very transparent and honest when I really feel that we all should adhere to the nothing about us without us standard, and so, I think it's really important to bring in people that have those perspectives where it's, really needed, and where rules or where different policies are going to be made that will affect it.
So you don't always see your role as answering the question, but sometimes, more importantly, engaging the right people who are voices of their own community.
Well, you put it better than I just did. Exactly. I
And
do.
does that apply in your experience not only to disability, but also to other groups that are often left out of the decision-making process?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, I think having a disability sometimes opens you up to the perspectives of others, and you start developing an empathy. I don't see the world in black and white. I see, just all the range of color, It makes me more open to the experiences of somebody who is gay, for example, and maybe discrimination or really just negative experiences they might have experienced growing up, I grew up with a disability. I know what it's like to be separated from my peers, it doesn't feel great, and I don't want that for others,
So you had a disability from birth,
That's exactly right. Mhm.
and that required you to use a wheelchair?
I was always in and out of a wheelchair until the age of 10. I had about 20 surgeries before the age of 20, so when I say,
20 surgeries.
Yeah, so that's pretty common, a pretty common story for somebody that was born with spina bifida like myself. So, I had my first surgery when I was an infant, multiple surgeries. So, yeah, I mean, it was just my life. And most of my summers as a child were, I won't say most of them, but a good number of them were spent in the hospital because my parents didn't want me to lose any school. Although I did lose school. I spent Christmas in the hospital, and so I think having that experience, and then having the experience of being in a school system, I won't age myself, but in the 80s, where maybe there wasn't as much of an effort to be inclusive. I think that they did okay for the time, but I certainly didn't feel that way back
But
then.
you're blossoming as an adult and being more independent. That was brought to you by a lot of engagement by your family, it sounds like, and also school administrators, medical team, and others.
Oh boy. Well, my parents were definitely encouraging me to be independent. And I think part of this is the 80s. I was a latchkey kid, the stereotypical Gen X latchkey kid, And, I walked or rolled home from school, watched my younger brother, made dinners and, used the microwave, but wasn't allowed to use the stove, all of that. And so I think that experience definitely, and perhaps maybe a genetic trait, to be independent, those experiences are probably what led me to become a very independent adult. I don't know that I would credit necessarily administrators and so forth. We just, we didn't have the same experience that a lot of families do now, where you kind of have that wraparound experience and you have like a lot of people coming from different perspectives that are there to help you,
You have siblings?
I do, I have a younger brother. Mm-hmm.
So, Michelle, I want to talk about all the things you've done since growing up. And that will take a while, I know, so we're going to take a break from focus right now, and we'll be back to cover the growth and development of Michelle Colvard, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, please stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Focus on Abilities.
Moments shared with loved ones are precious. Joy, enchantment, connection. It's why we travel. At Houston Airports, we know the magic of flight begins the moment you secure your parking spot and embark on your journey. That's why we work so hard to bring you the most convenient parking solutions that are the best fit for your trip. If you're traveling for business or leisure, whether your voyage starts from Bush Intercontinental or William P. Hobby Airport, our parking team at Valet Parking Eco Park, Eco Park 2, or Terminal Parking is here to give you a first-class experience with a big Texas smile. We're here for you to ensure this moment and every moment in between will be filled with great memories that will last a lifetime. So travel smarter, park smarter, and get more of the moments that matter.
Make the right call. 211-311-911. My home is on fire. Call 911 for emergency assistance such as ambulance, police, or fire. The fire hydrant is gushing everywhere. Call 311 for city-related services like water leaks, traffic tickets, and more. I need help finding a new place to live. Call 211 for all social service needs such as food banks, housing, shelter assistance, healthcare, and childcare services. Make the right call. 211-311-911.
You're a local. You're one of us. And we want to give you a richer, more exciting experience.
Come on.
We'll share the food that wowed national cooking shows and take you to the attractions that put us in Travel and Leisure's top 50 places to visit in 2023. And then we'll take you out to a ball game to see our World Series champs. Let Houston take you further. Let's get together. Book your stay today.
We could start by telling you how sleek it is, how it's at the edge of innovation in its industry, that it makes connections faster and more convenient. We could promote the fact that even traffic signals give it the green light, and that it moves so quickly we had to give it its own lane. Or you could just ride. Discover where this rail-like ride is going next. Visit ridemetro.org/MetroNext.
You're watching HTV, and this is Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden, and we are here today with Michelle Colvard. Michelle, now you obviously managed to get through school. Where did you graduate from college?
Oh, I went to U of H, graduated in psychology and sociology. I like to say I was in the right place in the right time, and was hired on by a research project. I started off as a volunteer on a project related to domestic violence. And, let me tell you, that was a challenging role. I ended up being hired. I wasn't sure if I could do it, and I was very honest with my boss.
So I think this is an object lesson. You started as a volunteer. You offered to do the work for no pay, and you proved you could do it, and they hired you.
That's exactly right, and that involved going out to the different area women's shelters, you name it, Hawk, Pasadena, Fort Bend, Webster, and then going out wherever the families, the women and their children went. We would go out to their homes, and as you know, many or most homes are not wheelchair accessible. Yeah. And
but let me clarify something.
Yeah.
They hired you not because you had a disability, but despite the fact you had a disability, and they hired you for the skills and knowledge you had, knowing you could do the job, again, from a whether
That's exactly right. Yeah, I was able, now, I will just say, I have always just kind of had this attitude that I needed to work a little harder, whether or not that's right. That's just been my approach, and I think that I was able to prove myself in that setting. And I was able to take a risk as well. And I was nervous about it, we worked out a plan, I would have a research assistant help push me up a curb,
But once you got the job, you realized, as you said, some of these families encountered barriers as a result of disability. You, with your own personal experience, could help them.
Right, and I'll just say this. So most of the families did not have disabilities. The focus of this particular research project was on domestic violence, and they had to have children that had behavioral problems because of, in many cases, the violence that they witnessed. And it was I don't know that I could do that work now that I'm a mom, but I did that job for about 5.5 years. I lasted longer than I think just about any of my other colleagues at the time, and I think having the perspective, just these different perspectives and the empathy,
So you brought something to the job.
Right, I think
And you
so.
took something away. Where did you go after that?
Right, and I think resilience as well, I had brought to the job, for sure. And after that, I decided to go and look at my master's in the School of Public Health, and I did. I entered the master's program. I also began work at UT in the medical school on another research project, this one on substance abuse. Just really at that point, I was just getting a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different experience, seeing and meeting people maybe I would never normally meet, or cross paths with. And I think that, again, opened up, my eyes and gave me more empathy. While I was working on my master's in public health, that is a field where one of the fields in public health is to focus on populations that are not well served, right, and health. And I just noticed nobody was really paying attention to people with disabilities, and the health problems and secondary health conditions that people with disabilities often have, and their risk, and the lack of any kind of outreach or any awareness about preventive care, specifically for this disability population. And I really could go on and on about this topic. And it really frustrated me. And so I did some research, and I found that the Center for Research on Women with Disabilities at Baylor College of Medicine was doing this work. Dr. Peg Nosek, who I know you know, and I cold called her, and basically told her I was a fan. I fangirled out on her and asked for a job, and she hired me, that really started my career as a disability advocate.
And at some point, the mayor appointed you as director of the Office on Disabilities in Houston.
Yes, that's true. Although before that, he had appointed me to the Houston Commission on Disabilities. Kim King was really one of my mentors, and she encouraged me. And I guess she saw something in me, and I'm telling you, I learned so much on that commission on disabilities. And then she encouraged me to chair for it, to become the chair. And I just, I was like, are you sure that I could do this? I was so young, and she said, absolutely, and I mean, I learned so much from her. And, you become, you kind of make that position what you will, what work you put into it on the commission.
Kim was your predecessor.
Yeah, she was.
She ran the mayor's office.
She was, and so when she left, I applied. I applied for for that position, and I was offered the position, and gosh, I mean, it was just such a amazing role, You go to bed every night realizing that you did something to help somebody every single day, but it was so busy. I mean, I worked such long hours, I remember, but you're really helping people in every way that you could think of. And that really became very obvious, the impact that you can have when Hurricane Ike happened. Is it Ike or Harvey? I'm losing track of our hurricanes now.
Probably Ike.
And oh boy, at the time I was living on the 3rd floor of a condo that had an elevator. And of course we had no power, in the city. So I was essentially temporarily homeless,
So you could empathize with the rest of us who were in the city.
Absolutely. So, and then I got a call from another colleague of mine who worked for the mayor as well, Buddy Grantham, and said, we need you at the George R. Brown. There are a lot of groups of people with disabilities there. And
So how'd you get down the 3 flights of steps?
Well, I got carried down by my husband. He carried me down. And I just was staying with different friends and then driving into the George R. Brown, working long hours, and then I realized, oh boy, we've got a big problem here. I mean, what was happening was a little bizarre. We had some wheelchairs that the city had, and the George R. Brown is so long. So you checked in at Exhibit Hall A, and then you went all the way to Exhibit Hall D to get your food, if you were there. And there were people that were arriving without their wheelchairs. They were arriving without their batteries for their power chairs. There were a large group that were deaf, and they didn't have the.
So you had your hand full.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I had my hands full, and then I had people that were taking wheelchairs.
Well, we'll talk more about the adventures of Michelle Colvard when we come back. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Find out how this ends. I'm Lex Frieden. You're watching HTV. We'll be right back. Join us.
The Kennedy Bakery building is said to be one of the oldest haunts in Houston.
Lots of people with completely different backgrounds coming together for a greater goal. Kind of represents Houston as a whole.
And everybody has a different style, but somehow that's kind of our thing.
These different patches of people and cultures.
They bring something new to the table that influences a lot of what we do.
We embrace the future, we learn, we grow, we evolve, and work as one to build a better future here in Houston.
You're watching Focus on Abilities. Michelle Colvard is our guest today. And Michelle, when we broke, you were solving the wheelchair theft crime of the century down at the George R. Brown after the hurricane. Did you ever find all those wheelchairs that disappeared?
Oh, no, of course not. But we ended up pulling resources together from a lot of our community partners. We had them shipped in from San Antonio, from all over Texas, so that we could get some extra chairs. And then we developed a system where we tracked those chairs. We tracked down the serial number before people left. We just made sure that they weren't leaving.
Houston's response to that disaster, in my opinion, was probably the cleanest example of how to deal with disability after a storm. I think we've had some missteps since then, and I hope we get back on track. You have, as we said, many things you've done in disability advocacy. Among them, you promoted the big show that we have, the Expo. You were one of the first people
Abilities
to
yeah.
bring us into the expo. You want to say something about that?
Yes, I am an ambassador for the Abilities Expo, which is just an amazing experience for anybody that hasn't come. I highly recommend it. It's free, and it's just this incredible bringing together of different organizations, everybody that's in the disability community. You could try out wheelchairs and
So family members,
workshops.
friends, advocates, professionals,
Everything.
anybody who's interested, Google Expo, Disability Expo.
Abilities Expo.
And Abilities Expo, and you'll find out when it is. Each year it's usually in the summertime
August.
or the end of the summer.
That's right, it's beginning of August.
Please join us out there. Michelle, you were also Miss Wheelchair Texas.
I was.
And that's the answer to the day's trivia question, by the way. Miss Wheelchair Texas, Michelle Colvard, and you've also promoted that program around the state too.
Right, and I think a lot of people don't realize, but that's an advocacy position as well. It's not a modeling gig. There's no swimsuit competition. So what it is really an opportunity for a woman with a disability to be a spokesperson. Or a role model, if you will, for people with disabilities, and to really bring awareness and highlight issues that are important to our community.
And you've been on the Commission on Disabilities. You were the director of the mayor's office. You're on the Planning Commission now.
That's right.
You're on the Parks Board. What other community service activities have you been engaged in?
Oh, I've been quite busy. I'm also involved in my daughter's little school as well, in the PTO. I've been involved in our little area park, nature preserve, and with all of those roles, I bring an eye or a lens of accessibility and the perspective of somebody with disability. So, for example, at my daughter's school, we worked really hard to bring in inclusive playground equipment.
And your daughter is how old?
She's 7.
She have a disability?
She does not.
And your husband was your friend
In
a
high
long time
school,
before
yeah.
you guys got married and had a baby, right?
That's right. That's right.
That's nice.
And we've been married 25 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
So
After all these other jobs, you've settled down now. For the last how many years have you been a senior executive at one of the world's transformational cancer centers?
Well, I would love to say I'm a senior executive. No, I'm a director, of research administration. And yes, we are the #1 cancer center in the world, in the nation.
Fantastic.
Certainly.
Good job. And with your leadership, we'll continue to be so, I'm sure. Michelle, the people with disabilities in Houston have always had an active voice. Do you feel like there's more that we as a community can and should be doing?
Absolutely. There's always more. Yeah, I mean, we're a really unique city that we have all of these individuals that really, really stepped everything forward for disability advocacy in our nation. You, for example, and I'm just following in your footsteps as well, but there's always more that we can do. You name it, whether it's housing, transportation, parking, you name it. There's a lot of opportunities out there, so we'll all just continue to stay busy.
Well, and we need new leaders too. I can think about the work that we did in parking. Now that's sort of drifted by the wayside, and maybe some of those things we need to get back to, but that's going to require new energy, new leaders. And what would you say to people who might be watching who might aspire to be the next Miss Wheelchair Texas or the next member of the Planning Commission?
Yeah, just show up. Really, that's a big part of it. Take risks. Take calculated risks. I think that's really important for us all. We have a tendency to think maybe we're going to go somewhere that maybe we're not wanted, or at least I know I have felt that way before, and I've been pleasantly surprised at many points in my life.
So I would add to that, find an organization and join it and see what you can do. Get engaged in the Houston Commission on Disabilities.
Yes.
Visit Disability Expo and meet others there. Many things we can do. Michelle, thank you for your leadership in the community. And thank you for being our guest today on Focus on Abilities.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking with you as always.
I want to thank all of you for watching. I want to thank HTV for putting this program together and putting it on the air. And I hope you will all join us next time for more Focus on Abilities. It's been my pleasure to host the show, and I'm wishing you a great day.